Here we just finished installing the Enlight Alpha Series Xenon HID system on this 2015 Dodge Challenger. If your Dodge Challenger didn't come with factory HIDs as an option, and you're looking to get rid of your factory halogen bulbs, this is a great option to convert your stock headlights over to a Xenon HID system. Let's take a look at how to install this. Let's start off by looking at the kit that you're going to get from Enlight. The kit will come with two of the Alpha Series 35 watt rapid start ballasts. Now these ballasts have a very high power startup feature, which allows the bulbs to heat up just as fast as an OEM HID system that you would get from, say, Acura or BMW or Audi or something like that. It will come with two of the second generation ARC Series HID bulbs. This particular kit will be a 6000K pure white color. It will also come with our Alpha Series relay harness. This is a very unique relay harness. It's not your standard kind of cheap, low quality relay harness. We use genuine Hella relay packs. It's a waterproof relay pack, so it's got seals here and in between the socket and the relay module itself. It's got silicone water seals on all the connectors. It uses a waterproof fuse holder, and also it's got nice thick power wires and ground cables. In addition, it will come with an anti-flicker module, some brackets, zip ties, and mounting bolts for the ballasts. First, pull the hood latch inside of the vehicle and then come out here, and then just to the right side of the center line of the hood, there's a lever, so you want to push the lever to the left towards the center of the hood, lift up. This will expose the engine bay and the installation will begin from here. In order to gain access to the headlight bulbs, what we're going to do is remove this plastic trim piece here. And there's just a couple of clips that are located underneath or on the bottom side of this plastic piece. And all you got to do is just work your way around. It's two pieces here, so you want to do the driver's side one first. Pop the clips up, lift it up, set it aside. Same thing here on the passenger side. Just lift up on it. There's a couple of clips. Two tabs over here on the sides. Slide those tabs out, set that aside. And here on the driver's side you can see that this is where the headlight housing is, and there's a cap on the back of the headlight, and same thing here on the driver's side. So let's start here on the driver's side of the vehicle. What you want to do is reach in, and this cap, hopefully you can see the two tabs that are sticking out. You can use those tabs for leverage, and you want to rotate the cap counterclockwise like you're loosening a bolt, and remove the cap just like that, and do the same thing for the passenger side. So here on the passenger side, I have already removed the headlight cap. Next, what we want to do is remove the factory halogen bulb. And to do that, first let's disconnect the connector here where my index finger is. And there's a tab there. You want to lift the tab towards the rear of the vehicle, towards the engine bay, and then pop it off. And then what you want to do, this bulb is a little different. You actually have to rotate it clockwise to get it out. Most bulbs, almost all bulbs in all cars, you have to rotate counterclockwise, but this guy, you got to do it clockwise. So once you rotate it clockwise, you might have to wiggle a little bit here, and then the bulb will come out. And do this for both the passenger side and the driver's side. So the next thing to do is to prepare the HID bulbs and the headlight caps. So due to the way that this vehicle is set up, we actually have to route the harness for the HID bulbs through the headlight cap. To do that, you're going to need either a spade bit, or I have this Christmas tree bit or a stepper bit that will allow you to drill roughly a 23 millimeter diameter hole works best. You could get away with a 1-inch hole, but I like to drill them just a little smaller. That way you get a nice tight seal with this rubber grommet here. So next step, drill a 1-inch diameter hole dead center in the middle of both headlight caps. Here you can see that I've got the hole drilled here. And then also what I've done is I've just used like a side cutting tool and a file just to take down this rib here. That will give us a little bit more clearance to fit the rubber grommet in. So here you can see that I've fed the cables for the Xenon bulb harness through the headlight cap, and I've also got the rubber grommet fitted. Now you want to make sure that one half of the rubber grommet flap is on the outside of the headlight cap, and the other half is on the inside. This is how you get the watertight seal. And you want to make sure that the Xenon HID bulb and this connector here are on the inside of the headlight cap. This is where the housing is and where the bulb will go into the headlight housing. And then you have these connectors here on the outside. So do this for both the passenger side and driver side headlight caps. So now is a good time to remove the protective cover on the HID bulb. Do be careful not to touch the glass with your fingers. If you do accidentally touch the glass with your fingers, use isopropyl alcohol to wipe off your fingerprints. Any type of residue or fingerprints left on the bulb will shorten their life. So now we're here on the passenger side of the vehicle, and we're going to put this into the headlight housing. And just to make things a little bit easier, why don't you go ahead and pull these black wires here through the rubber grommet. That way you have a longer distance between the HID bulb and the cap. This will make it just slightly easier to install. This is a bit tricky because now we have to deal with putting the cap in and the HID bulb at roughly the same time, or at least they're connected to each other now. And what we're going to do is, this particular bulb is a 9012 bulb for this 2015 Challenger. I believe that the 2016 models will use a 9005, but you can use a similar methodology for putting this in. Now you want to line up the larger tab so it's parallel with the ground, so it should be horizontal. And then what you want to do is you want to feed in both the HID bulb and the cap under the core support here. And I'm kind of doing this blind, so I'm sorry I can't show this on camera. But you need to insert the HID bulb into the opening in the headlight housing, and then line up the tab. Now remember, you have to rotate the bulb counterclockwise to lock it in place. So once you get the 3 tabs lined up, just kind of rotate the bulb around until you feel it click in, and then rotate it counterclockwise to lock it in place. Here you can see I've got the HID bulb installed on the passenger side, and now what we need to do is take the other connector that's on the inside of the headlight cap and connect it to the factory headlight plug that's inside the headlight housing. Here you can see I've pulled out the factory headlight connector from the headlight housing, and I've made the connection between that and this part of the HID bulb harness. Now, this is something that we're going to have to pay attention to, and we may have to come back to this later. When we install the relay harness, this needs to be the correct polarity. Now, both these wires are black here, and it doesn't tell us which one is 12 volt positive and which one's a ground. So if we hook everything up and the system doesn't come on, we're going to want to come back to this connector on the passenger side and flip this around 180 degrees, plug it back in. This will reverse the polarity to the relay harness. That way it will turn on. So now you can tuck all the wires back inside the headlight housing, and then rotate the headlight cap until you get it to tuck in a little bit, and then turn it clockwise like you're tightening a screw to lock it in place. Now for the driver's side, it's going to be very similar. There is one difference though. So on the driver's side of the vehicle, we will not be using this other connector here, which is on the inside of the headlight cap. And that is because the relay harness only needs an input from one side. Now, although this will be placed inside the headlight housing, we will not connect it to the factory headlight plug. Now the driver's side is a little bit more challenging just because there's not enough space. At least for me, I can't get my hand around here enough so that I can actually lock the bulb in place. I can get the 3 tabs to line up in the socket, but I don't have enough leverage to actually lock it in place. So in order to give us more access and more room to access the bulb, we're actually going to remove the airbox. So to remove the airbox, you can start off by removing 1, 2, 3 screws with either a flathead Phillips, or I believe this is an 8mm socket. And then also you can use a flathead to just loosen the band clamp. Don't take this this bolt all the way out. Just loosen it enough so that we can slide off the rubber hose. So once you've loosened the band clamp, and then you can just slide off the hose like this, and then after you got the 3 screws out, the airbox will just lift up, and then what you can do is set that aside. The air filter is just set in like so. You can also set that aside. And now what we want to do is pull out the lower part of the airbox, and that will give us more access to the headlight bulb. And to do that, loosen this, well, take this bolt all the way out. Next, all you have to do is lift up on the airbox, and there's a couple of rubber grommets on the bottom that will pop out. So just lift up, work your way around, you'll hear it come loose, and then set this aside. Now here you can see on the driver's side we've got much more clearance to access the headlight bulb and use the same process as we did on the passenger side to lock in the Xenon HID bulb. Again, on the driver's side, make sure you leave the factory headlight connector unplugged, and also the extra connector that is inside the headlight cap disconnected. It's not going to be used on the driver's side. So once you're done, it should look like this. I've already put the headlight cap back on, and you've got just these two cables that we're going to use on the driver's side. And what you can do is just use the zip ties to tie this together and make sure it doesn't wobble around or anything like that. Now the next step is to prepare the HID ballast. The kit will come with 2 stainless steel mounting brackets, 4 bolts which will be used to mount the brackets to the ballasts, and an extra nut and bolt combination which can be used to mount the relay pack. So once you've mounted the brackets to the ballasts, this is what it should look like here. And now let's go install these inside the vehicle. Here on the passenger side of the vehicle, I am actually going to mount the ballast using one of these factory ground studs. So I'm going to loosen this nut here, and then I'm going to slide the bracket for the HID ballast onto the nut. I'll probably put it underneath the ground flange, that's the way it sits a little bit more flush, and it will sit right in here. So I'll do that and I'll show you what it looks like. Here you can see I've got the bracket mounted to that stud, and the ballast is nice and secure. It's not going to wobble around or anything like that. And what you want to do is you want to feed the cables coming out of the ballast down underneath this in this region here, so that we can make the connection to the relay harness and also the bulbs in a little bit. Now to the driver's side, what we'll do is we'll remove this fender bolt here and then use that as a mounting point for the ballast, and it'll sit there just like that. So now we got that mounted nicely, and this will give us just enough clearance to put the airbox back in as well. And then you can route the cables down into this region here where we'll make the connections in a little bit. Now is a good time to make the connections between the HID bulbs. These are the high voltage cables for the HID bulbs and the high voltage output of the HID ballast. So they only go in one way, but make this connection. Here's what it looks like after the connection's been made, and do this for both the driver's side and the passenger side. Now it's time to install the Alpha Series relay harness along with the anti-flicker module. Now a lot of people ask, why do we need a relay harness? You know, what's the point? There's kits out there that you can buy that don't come with a relay harness, and you may be able to plug them in, turn them on, and you'll get light out. Now that's fine, but that's not the way that these systems are designed. The Alpha Series HID system with the rapid start ballast, it needs a relay harness. The ballast draw a lot of current upon startup, and the factory electronic system is not designed to deliver that type of power through the factory headlight wiring and circuitry. The Alpha Series relay harness not only optimizes the performance of the ballast, it prolongs the life of the ballast by giving it a solid and steady stream of power whenever it needs it. It also protects the vehicle's factory electronic system. Using a relay harness allows the HID system to run independent of the vehicle's electronic system. It isolates it. And the reason why it does that is because it draws power directly from the battery and grounds directly to the chassis instead of pulling electricity or pulling current through whatever wires and circuitry that's already inside the vehicle. All it does is it takes a signal. So it takes a signal from inside the headlight housing, which is very low power, it's low stress, runs it through the anti-flicker module and into the relay pack here. And that's all it takes through the vehicle's factory electronic system, but it doesn't take the full power. It goes through the relay harness instead. Okay, to start the installation of the relay harness, first find the red main power wire with the fuse holder on it. Again, this has got a nice waterproof fuse holder. And also the primary ground, which has got these 2 black cables coming to a ring terminal. Now you might say, oh well, there's no battery in the engine bay of this vehicle, and you'd be correct, but there is a fuse box and the main power post, which is located here. And this red block here, which you can open by pressing the tab here, lifting up. This will expose the primary power for the engine bay, and this goes to the battery, which I believe is in the trunk on this car. So this is where we will attach the red ground cable, and we will take the black primary ground cable, and we're going to come back to this location here. where we've mounted the ballast. Now you can either use the same connection here, or you can just hop one over and ground this cable to this stud here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make those connections and I'll show you what it looks like. And just a quick tip here, I turned the ring terminal into a U terminal just by using a cutting tool and kind of cutting out the center section. That way, when we want to connect it to the stud here, all you have to do is just back off the nut a little bit and then slide the connection onto the stud and then tighten it back down. Here you can see that I've mounted the primary power wire. Now, actually what I did is I loosened the nut and I slid the ring terminal, which is now the U terminal, just underneath the red plastic trim piece here, and there's a black plastic lower piece. There's the metal positive contact that's underneath the nut, and when you do it this way, you can close the terminal cover and it doesn't interfere with the wire, and you still get a good solid electrical connection. And here you can see I've routed the wire and then put it and put the fuse holder here, and then I will zip tie this to the metal bracket later so it doesn't move around. And here you can see that I've got the ground cable coming here to the ground stud, the factory ground location. Now I was debating whether to use the nut and bolt that comes with the kit to mount the relay pack to this nice little bracket here, but I actually found that if you use this factory fender bolt here, that works pretty well. It looks nice, and the relay pack fits just in between the core support and this bracket here, and it also gives you some room here for the cables to come down. So this is where I mounted the relay pack. So let's look at the connections on the passenger side of the vehicle from the relay harness. Now the one in my hand here now, this is the power connector for the ballast on the passenger side, and this guy here, this will be the signal input to the relay pack. This will connect to the connector coming out of the HID bulb harness. Now first I'll go ahead and make this connection, and then I will plug this guy in as well, and I'll show you what it looks like. So here in my hand, this is the, hopefully you can see the silver from the HID ballast here, and then there's the power connector coming out. This is where I plugged in that first connector. And you do got to make sure that the orientation is correct. Although the connector will fit in, it will fit in upside down and right side up. There's a locking tab on one side of the HID ballast input, and you got to make sure that the locking tab is lined up with the appropriate hook on the connector from the relay harness. So that's what that connection looks like. And now this cable here, it's got the this particular one has kind of a steel braided loom on it, and this is coming out from the back of the headlight cap. Oops, coming out from the back of the headlight cap and into the anti-flicker module. Now this is the connection here that we were talking about earlier. This thing is polarity sensitive. So if the power and ground wires are reversed coming into this, for example, let's just say that the green wire was positive and the silver wire was negative. If we screwed up the connection inside the headlight cap, this will be flipped around and this module will not activate. And in order to fix that, we would just go back inside the headlight cap, flip the factory headlight plug around 180 degrees, plug it in, and then that'll just switch to polarity here outside the headlight cap, and this will cause the anti-flicker module to work as it's supposed to. Okay, now that we've got the connections on the passenger side made, the next step is to route the long cable of the relay harness all the way over to the driver's side. Now I've already done that, and I'll show you what it looks like here. So hopefully you can see this, but this cable right here is the long one, and I've routed it underneath all of the different support brackets here. And what I've done is I've zip tied it to a factory wiring harness to secure it. That way it doesn't wiggle around too much or anything like that. Let's see if we can get that in focus. Okay. So here's a point where I zip tie it, and I ran it underneath these white brackets here. And then here's the hood latch, and I've got another zip tie here, which is tied to both. You can see that it's tied to both the hood latch cable, and also there's another factory wire harness back there. And again, keep running it underneath. Probably going to use another zip tie maybe around this bracket here, and then over here to the driver's side. Now I've also gone ahead and made the connection between the ballast and the relay harness. Now, this side has an additional ground cable coming off of it. That's that black wire here. And conveniently, this car has got a factory ground location, again, on a stud here. Here's a factory harness where my finger is. And then all you got to do, remove the nut that's on the stud, and then connect the ground wire, the HID harness ground wire to that stud. So that's all the connections. At this point, let's test the system to see, to check and make sure everything works. So during the initial startup, there will be a little bit of a bluish-green light as the bulbs are warming up, but as you can see pretty quickly, they change to a nice pure white color. And the camera doesn't necessarily depict the real-world color that you would see with the naked eye, but in this case, it looks like it's pretty close. And you'll also get a nice match to the factory LED halo rings. So here we've got the lights tested now. Let's go tidy up the installation. Now at this point, after you've got all the connections made, now what you need to do is you got to secure everything using the provided zip ties and make sure that nothing's flopping around. So you can see here I've got the igniter module for the HID ballast kind of tucked away, sitting on top of the headlight housing plug. And I've got some zip ties. Here's a zip tie here, and I've bundled all the cables coming from the relay harness and also the anti-flicker module bundled together. So the zip tie here, and then a couple more zip ties holding the cable that goes across. And here on this side, I've also secured all the cables together, and that way nothing is flopping around or moving around. And at this point, also make sure that the fuse holder is secured, make sure your relay is nice and tight, and we can start to put the airbox back together. So here's the lower half of the airbox that we're going to put back in first. There is a rubber stud that looks like this, and you got to make sure that you line that up with the hole here, and also simultaneously you want to line up the triangle in the base of the fender well there with the triangle here. Once you get the lower part of the airbox snapped back in, don't forget to put in the long 8mm bolt. Now take the air filter, line up the air filter with the lower part of the airbox, set that in there, fits in nicely. Take the top part of the airbox now. There are 3 tabs that are on the back side of the airbox towards the rear of the vehicle that you have to line up with 3 slots, slide it in, and then rotate forward the top part of the airbox. And then you can go ahead and put in the 3 screws along with the air hose here, and then tighten the band clamp. When you put the air hose back on, do pay attention that there's these 2 kind of rubber tabs, and that lines up with the opening in the plastic ring here. So make sure that you get the interface between the rubber hose and the plastic top part of the airbox to mate properly before you tighten down the band clamp. And don't over tighten this or you might break it. So just enough. Next, let's put back the plastic trim pieces. You gotta start with the passenger side one first, kind of line it up, feed in the two locking tabs that are in this side, and then push down to lock in the tabs there. Grab the the driver's side. I'm gonna feed this guy under here, and then put in the 2 tabs that are on the side. Line it up, and then push down until you hit the clips, and that's it. That concludes the installation. If you're interested in purchasing this kit, go to www.enlightauto.com, go to the Select Your Vehicle section, and go and find the 2015 or 2016 Dodge Challenger.